Hello, it's good to see you again, and the news in briefs will start the broadcast as usual.
1 year since the devastating earthquake and tsunami, the Japanese government and people are working together to fix consequences. The Vietnam visit of a Belgian delegation is expected to enhance economic ties between the two countries. Experts say agricultural restructuring is essential to the country's economic and social development.
It has been 1 year since the devastating earthquake and tsunami claimed more than 15,000 lives and left 3,000 others missing in Japan. The Japanese government and people showed tremendous efforts to get through and salvage what the worst disaster has left behind. Japanese ambassador to Vietnam, Yasuaki Tanizaki, will tell us about that process.
First of all, I would like to extend my sincere thanks once again to the people of Vietnam. Just 1 year ago, the natural disaster took place in Japan. And now Japan is on the road to recovery. Last week, I had a chance to visit the site, which was very heavily damaged by the tsunami. It's a very awful scene. 1 year has already passed. But in spite of that, I have just noticed how terribly the tsunami attacked Japan. I have visited the place, and there, all areas is just flat. Only the few buildings remained, destroyed, but remained. So I have noticed the point where the seawater caused by the tsunami came to the height. It's a fourth floor of the buildings. It's a very awful scene. So in spite of that, the people living there, and together with solidarity of the Japanese people, they are very, very brave, and they have been very strongly struggling with the recovery process. I think that the recovery process is successfully going on.
Earlier on March the 9th, the Japanese embassy in Hanoi held a ceremony to commemorate the worst disaster in living memory of Japanese people and others around the world. Present at the event, Deputy Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc expressed his sympathy over the suffering the Japanese people have had to face. He said he believes that Japanese people will soon overcome their current difficulties, adding that Vietnam will do its utmost to help Japan. A documentary recalling the most horrible earthquake in eastern Japan was screened at the Japanese Culture Exchange Center in Vietnam. Most recently, the United Nations hosted a concert entitled Overcoming the Disaster, Gratitude from Japan to the World, featuring the Japanese taiko drum troupe, Onekoza, and other musicians in remembrance of the victims of the earthquake.
They have come here to show their commitment to victims of natural disasters around the world. Let us draw inspiration from tonight's performance to conquer tomorrow's challenges. The United Nations and the world are behind Japan in this.
At the time, Japan received spiritual and material assistance from Vietnam and other countries across the world. It has so far got financial assistance worth more than 346.6 billion Japanese yen, equivalent to nearly 88 trillion Vietnamese dong, with 80% going to the victims themselves.
Belgian Crown Prince Felipe is leading a high-level business delegation to visit Vietnam from the 11th to the 16th of March to promote trade and economic linkages between the two countries. The Belgian regional ministers held a press briefing on their visit. Here are the details.
The Belgian delegation includes executives from 200 firms engaged in water and waste management, transport, port, logistics, space technology and agriculture.
And the choice of this mission for Vietnam matches the policy jointly conducted by the regions and the federal level within the Belgium Foreign Trade Agency, which consists of paying special attention.
In 2011, two-way trade between Vietnam and Belgium reached about $1 billion. Belgium has poured about $108 million in foreign direct investment in Vietnam to date, and its business people are very keen on increasing their operations here. During the visit, Belgian business people are expected to take part in workshops, make fact-finding tours to some Vietnamese localities, and sign 13 memoranda of understanding with Vietnamese partners.
The Buddhist Sangha of the Mekong Delta province of An Giang held its 5th Congress for the 2012 to 2017 tenure on March 9th and 10th. About 1,000 local Buddhist monks, nuns, and followers participated in this Congress.
The participants elected 47 members to the Provincial Buddhist Sangha Executive Board for 2012-2017. Most Venerable Thích Huệ Tài was re-elected as the head of the Executive Board. In the previous tenure, the An Giang Buddhist Sangha has involved ardently in social activities in the locality. They built 220 houses for poor people and raised over 25 billion Vietnamese dong for other charitable activities. The Provincial Buddhist Sangha also helped with promoting education and training on Buddhism among monks, nuns, and followers. On this occasion, Most Venerable Thích Huệ Tài, head of the Executive Board, were presented with the Great National Unity Order.
More thousands of Buddhist dignitaries, monks, nuns, followers, and tourists flocked the Quan Thế Âm Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva festival from March 9th to March 11th in the central Da Nang city to offer prayers of peace for the nation. Let's take a look.
The festival, one of the 15 largest festive events in the country, is held annually at the Quan Thế Âm Pagoda in Da Nang. It takes place from the 17th to 19th of the second lunar month. A wide range of Buddhist activities was held, including a ritual to pray for peace for the country, and prosperity, good health, and happiness for people, and a display of paintings and cultural works dealing with Buddhist topics. A delegation of monks from the Nagayan Dharamsala Monastery of India came to the festival. The Quan Thế Âm Festival was first held in 1960. It was recognized as a national festival in 2000.
At a recent conference, a common sentiment amongst participating experts is that agricultural restructuring is essential to the country's economic and social development, as well as helping this sector achieve again its record last year, an export value of $25 billion. We find out more.
Based on the National Agricultural Outlook for this year, Nguyễn Đỗ Anh Tuấn, Director of the Center for Agricultural Policy, said, although the sector experienced growth of 4% last year, market movements are forecast to be complicated this year. Due to financial difficulties, the sector will face decreased demand from import countries. Moreover, Vietnam will also have to compete with an increased number of new arrivals, such as Ethiopia in coffee, South Africa in rice, and Myanmar in aquaculture products. Epidemics such as foot-and-mouth disease, blue ear pig disease, and bird flu will also continue threatening productivity. Another expert, Đặng Kim Sơn, who is General Director of the Institute of Policy and Strategy for Agriculture and Rural Development, said, key commodities such as rice and coffee are still experiencing unstable supply due to farmers focusing on short-term markets alone, suffering big losses as a result.
In the past, the approach has been to set production targets and try to achieve them, and that's been very successful. The future is about meeting demand, and that's domestic demand and that's international demand. There's huge potential in the domestic market. People are eating everything, and they're eating all the time, and they're willing to pay more money.
International experts said the prospect of Vietnam agriculture sector in the long term depends largely on the sustainability of farming production, and the application of scientific and technological advances can help. Vietnam's agriculture sector forms a large part of the national economy with earnings of $25 billion, accounting for 22% of total export turnover in 2011. Agriculture was the only sector to achieve a net export surplus of $9 billion last year.
The Vietnamese Embassy in Canada and the Hanoi-based TRUYnh Tourism and Trading Company are participating in the 18th Canada Tourism Expo. They look to realize the country's strategy to expand tourism in the North American markets and Canada in particular.
The two-day event saw the participation of around 200 travel agencies from nearly 60 countries and territories across the world and thousands of visitors. According to the Vietnam Embassy led Vương Hà, the embassy will from now on invite other Vietnamese travel companies to take part in this tourism fair to promote the country's tourist products to Canadians. At the event, several Canadian and international leading travel agencies also joined hands in introducing to visitors their tours in Vietnam.
And those are all for today's program. Tune in back in tomorrow for updates.